You are standing in a room full of people. Music is playing. Conversations are happening all around you. Someone laughs nearby. Someone else is telling a story you cannot quite hear. You are surrounded, completely, by other human beings. And yet you feel, with a strange and specific ache, entirely alone. This is one of the most disorienting experiences a person can have. Not the loneliness of an empty room, which at least makes sense. But the loneliness of a full one. The loneliness that exists in the presence of others, that seems to mock the very idea that proximity should be enough. If you have felt this, you are not broken. You are responding to something real, something psychologists have only recently begun to understand with any precision. And the explanation reveals something uncomfortable about the difference between being around people and actually being known by them. Let's start with a distinction that changes everything. Psychologist Robert Weiss, one of the foundational researchers on loneliness, identified two distinct types: social loneliness and emotional loneliness. Social loneliness is the absence of a broader network, no friend group, no community, no sense of belonging to a tribe. Emotional loneliness is different. It is the absence of a specific, deep attachment, the lack of one person, or a small number of people, who truly know you. And here is the critical insight. You can have abundant social connection and still suffer from severe emotional loneliness. You can be embedded in a friend group, surrounded at every party, never short of someone to talk to, and still feel completely unseen. Because the two needs are not interchangeable. 100 shallow connections do not add up to one deep one. This is why the crowded room can feel so isolating. You are meeting the social need. You are failing to meet the emotional one. And your nervous system, which evolved to track both separately, registers the gap with real distress. To understand why this distress is so intense, you have to understand what loneliness actually is at a biological level. Psychologist John Cacioppo, who spent his career studying loneliness at the University of Chicago, proposed that loneliness functions like hunger or thirst, an evolved signal designed to motivate a specific corrective behavior. Just as hunger pushes you toward food because your ancestors who ignored hunger did not survive, loneliness pushes you toward connection because your ancestors who became isolated from the group did not survive either. A human alone, cut off from the tribe, was a human exposed to predators, scarcity, and threat with no one to share the burden. Loneliness is not a character flaw or a sign of social failure. It is your oldest alarm system, calibrated over millions of years, telling you that your connection to others is not meeting the threshold your survival once depended on. But here is what makes modern loneliness so confusing. The alarm is not calibrated to count people. It is calibrated to detect a specific kind of bond, what researchers call attachment quality, not attachment quantity. Your nervous system does not care how many people are in the room. It cares whether any of them actually see you. Whether anyone in that room could tell you were struggling without you saying a word. Whether there is a single person there who knows the version of you that exists underneath the version you perform. If the answer is no, the alarm fires. No matter how loud the room is. This explains a phenomenon researchers have documented again and again. Loneliness rates are often highest not in isolated individuals but in densely populated cities, in crowded workplaces, on social media platforms with thousands of connections. Cacioppo's research found that loneliness is not primarily about the objective number of social contacts a person has, it is about the perceived gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. You can be objectively never alone and subjectively desperately lonely, because the two measurements are tracking entirely different things. There is also a deeper, more unsettling layer to this. Psychologist Sherry Turkle, who has studied the impact of digital communication on intimacy for decades, argues that modern social life has become saturated with what she calls connection without conversation. We are in constant contact, texting, liking, scrolling, reacting, but increasingly out of practice with the kind of sustained, vulnerable, undistracted attention that actual intimacy requires. You can spend an entire evening surrounded by people who are all, simultaneously, partially elsewhere, checking their phones, performing a version of themselves for an audience, present in body but fragmented in attention. A room full of partially present people does not satisfy emotional loneliness, because emotional loneliness requires someone's full attention, and full attention has become one of the rarest things a person can give. This is compounded by a phenomenon social psychologists call pluralistic ignorance. In a crowd, everyone assumes everyone else is having a better, more connected time than they are. Because everyone is performing comfort and ease, no one believes anyone else feels the isolation they themselves feel. This creates a strange, silent loop. The room is full of people quietly lonely, each one convinced they are the only one, each one therefore less likely to be the one who breaks the performance and says something real. The crowd's loneliness becomes self-perpetuating, not because people do not want connection, but but because everyone is waiting for someone else to go first. So what actually resolves this kind of loneliness? Not more people. Not more parties, more group chats, more contacts in your phone. Research consistently points toward a different variable entirely: self-disclosure. Psychologist Arthur Aron's work on closeness, including his now famous 36 questions designed to accelerate intimacy between strangers, found that the critical mechanism behind feeling truly connected to another person is not shared activity or shared history. It is mutual, escalating vulnerability. It is the act of being known, specifically and accurately, by someone who has earned the right to see you clearly. You do not need a crowd to stop feeling lonely. You need one conversation in which you stop performing. This is uncomfortable, because it requires risk. Being known means being seen in your unfiltered state, which means risking that the version of you underneath the performance might not be liked as much as the performance itself. It is far safer to stay in the crowd, to keep things light, to let the noise of the room stand in for actual contact. But safety, in this domain, is exactly what perpetuates the ache. The next time you find yourself in a room full of people, feeling that particular, specific loneliness, notice it. Do not assume something is wrong with you for feeling alone in a crowd. Your nervous system is working exactly as it should. It is telling you, accurately, that proximity is not the same as connection, that being surrounded is not the same as being known. And then, if you can, do the harder thing. Find one person. Put the phone down. Say something true. The room will still be loud. But you might, finally, not be alone in it.